Hey guys, welcome to the series of VMware vSphere install, configure and manage. In this session, we are going to discuss about vSphere security. Then we will see how to add Active Directory domain to a single sign-on, assigning the permissions to single sign-on user and Active Directory users. Then before we conclude, we will be looking after how to create a roles. This is a agenda. Just I am talking about the overview. In detail, we are going to deal with each and every topic in this session. So we are going to perform lots of hands-on labs as well over here. So guys, what we have learned is that when you deploy a vCenter server, just to recall a tutorial where I have shown you the deployment of vCenter server, I told you that the VMware hands-on lab over here, the vCenter server is pre-deployed. It is deployed in the lab. But I have shown you a session in my home lab where I have shown you how to deploy a vCenter server, and we have started with the configuration. So very first, what you did over there is, if you remember, it asked you for a single sign-on. So just recall that administrator at vsphere.local was the username, and once you have created a vCenter server, the very first thing what you did over there was you have created a virtual data center. And of course, this thing we have done in VMware hands-on lab also. I have shown you how to create a virtual data center, and I have shown inform you over there that although these things are already available, the virtual data center clusters, everything was available in your hands-on lab, but in a fresh way we have learned. So just recall our previous session. This will be very important over here. So we have learned how to create a virtual data center in your vCenter, and inside your virtual data center you have created the cluster in your hands-on lab. Then you have added the host inside the cluster. We have learned about the folder concept as per your requirement, how you will create a folder. These were the basic things which we have already discussed in our initial sessions. If someone forgot, just go and recall that tutorials, and you will be able to see that yes, with this all things we have already covered in our earlier sessions. So we have seen during the time of installation a recommended single sign-on domain with the name vsphere.local. So guys, again I repeat, if you forget all these things, just refer my vSphere deployment tutorial to recall these things. And I believe these are the basic things and you would remember. If in case you forgot, just go and recall these things and then again come over here. So now guys, come to your hands-on lab. And over here, when you just log into your vCenter server, you can see you have logged in into your vCenter server using this user administrator at vsphere.local. So what is this user? This was the user which was the initial user asked to be created when you were deploying the vCenter server. If you remember, there was a default domain with the name vsphere.local, and over there you have created a administrator at vsphere.local. Similarly, over here in the VMware hands-on lab, when VMware was creating a hands-on lab, when the VMware team was deploying the vCenter server, at that time they would have created this user administrator at vsphere.local for you. So by default, this user administrator at vsphere.local is having full privileges. It will have full privileges. So now the question comes, and I'm saying that it gives you a full privileges. So will you give a same administrator access to all the users in your company? This is the administrator account. If you can see that it has a full privileges, it has access to your vCenter virtual data center cluster, host, all the virtual machines, each and everything. The full-fledged access is given for this administrator user. So the question comes, will you give the same type of access to all the users in the company? The answer will be no. All user can't be given full privilege access. You will be giving the access to the engineers working in VMware domain for your organization as per the role, as per their profile. What is their profile? If he is administrator, you will be giving administrator access. If he is a L1 admin, you will be giving the L1 type of access. This roles and profiling, which all things which we are going to learn in the coming time. So don't worry, just to give you a brief overview that why do you need to give a role based access. Because if a engineer is an administrator, so depending upon his profile you will be giving a access, and similarly if he is a L1 engineer, you will be giving a L1 type of support, the monitoring type of support. So we will be doing this practically as well guys over here. And as I told you, this is basically a vSphere security session. So now when we are talking about the security, what are the basics of security? So over here on the slide, you can see that there are few points written over here. So don't worry, whenever we are discussing about the PPT, it is not like we just read a theory or just give you a definition explanation. No, whatever we do, we practically justify. So what all things are written over here, we will be justifying practically that permissions are inherited in a hierarchical manner. Permissions defined for a child object always override the permission that are propagated from the parent's object. Remember the principle of least privilege. This all things we are going to justify practically, and when we will be justifying the practically each and everything, we will be again coming to the slide and we will discuss this. But the important thing what we have to discuss is this particular diagram. Okay, so this is basically the basics of the vSphere security. Very first thing what you can see is vSphere object. You can see over here vSphere object. Let's understand this terms and terminologies one by one. Although these terms might be something sometime confusing, but trust me guys, when we will be performing a hands-on lab, you will be thinking after the conclusion of this session that it was one of the best topic of VMware. When you will be learning about the vSphere security with the hands-on lab, you will realize that yes, this was one of the best topic and you will enjoy the session. But over here, just concentrate and focus. Like when we talk about vSphere object, what is vSphere object? The virtual machine, any virtual machine which you create in any of your host. So VM is a kind of one object, cluster is one another object, virtual data center is another object. So object doesn't have any technical significance, but it is simply a terminology over here. Now this cluster, this cluster will be a one object, region A01, this one, this will be one object. Okay, then this host are there, this host will be kind of one object. Then you will have the virtual machines, this will be another object. Object doesn't have any technical significance, but it is just a terminology. You can see just below vSphere object there are user or group, right? Assume that you have one user with the name admin1. Assume that you have one user with the name admin1. Now, being an administrator, it is your responsibility to define the type of access to that particular user depending upon his job in your organization. Whether he or she will have access to a specific virtual machine or a cluster or a specific object. Assume that, talking in the figure, assume that this is an admin1 user. Being an administrator, it is your responsibility that what all access, what all object access you will be giving depending upon his or her job. Maybe depending upon his job, the admin1 user will need the access to cluster object, or maybe he will need access to host object, or even it is possible that this particular admin, assuming that it is admin 1, this admin 1 user will need access to only a specific virtual machine object. Now moving on, assume that this admin 1 user was there and admin 1 user was in need of, depending upon his or her job type, he or she was in need of a specific cluster access. Okay, so you will give the access to this particular user on this object. Which object? Cluster object. Now next comes the role. What kind of access, what kind of role this user will have? The user or a group, this admin one user given a access to cluster, what kind of access, what kind of role, whether it will be a full privilege role you want to give, or you want to give a specific role, that will be defined under roles. So where roles are defined? Roles are defined over the object. Means roles will be defined on a cluster or a VM or on a specific host. So in short, how the security will work, it will be like which user you want to give access and for which object you want to give access. User can be admin 1, admin 2, L1, L2, and so on. So this particular user, assuming you have been giving permission to admin 1 user, so admin 1 user will be given access to cluster object. And then comes the what kind of object, what type, sorry, what kind of access, what type of access, which is nothing but the roles. So this is the basic of VMware vSphere security. Let me repeat again so that you get clear. As an administrator, you have to give access to a specific object. So over here, user will be admin user, L1 user, L2 user. Then the object will be the cluster, the host, or even it can be a virtual machine. So admin one user is there, want access to a cluster. Then the next question will come, what kind of access, which is nothing but the role. So the roles will be defined on that particular object. You will be going to the cluster, you will add a user over there, and at the same place you will be defining the role of that particular user for this particular object. So the roles are nothing but the privileges. Now coming to your VMware hands-on lab, we are going to start with the practicals. So guys, over here, coming to your VMware hands-on lab, when you select your vCenter and just go to permissions over here, you will see that your administrator account, administrator vSphere.local is a domain, right? This particular user have which role? Administrator role, which means that it has administrator access. Administrator at vSphere.local, this particular user has full access. Which object? The vCenter object. Administrator at vSphere.local user has full access. Role is full access. Administrator role to which object? To the vCenter server object. Now just do one thing. Open a duplicate tab over here. And I will tell you why you're opening the duplicate tab. And over here, you will see these three lines, right? Just click on these three lines and then click on administration option over here. Scroll down a little. Okay, just scroll down and you will see single sign-on option. Under that, click on configuration. Now in single sign-on configuration, you will find three tabs: identity provider, local account, and login message. Click over here on identity sources. Under identity provider, click on identity sources. Over here, you will find two things. You can see vSphere.local. vSphere.local domain is a system domain. And by default, the user created in this domain, vSphere.local domain, is accepted to access a vCenter server, which is nothing but administrator at vSphere.local. In identity sources, you will find two things over here. The first thing is a system domain. The domain is vSphere.local, and in this domain, there is a account administrator created during the initial configuration, and by default, it is having access to the full vCenter server. Okay, it is a valid identity source, and any user created in this domain is a valid user to access vCenter server. Which domain? vSphere.local. Any user will be created in this particular domain, vSphere.local, will be valid source, will be a valid user to access the vCenter server. As if now there is only one user, which is administrator, that might be created during the time of deployment of vCenter by VMware hands-on lab team. But you can create multiple user in this particular domain. Okay, you can create multiple user, and in this session we are going to create multiple user to perform our labs. Another thing is, when you deployed vCenter server, a local OS domain, see, local OS domain is also visible over here, and it is created by default. So guys, basically vCenter server, if you remember, is deployed on which operating system? If anyone can recall, it is good. If not, I will tell you. vCenter server is deployed over a Photon Linux machine. We have repeated these things multiple times in our earlier session that vCenter server is a pre-configured appliance machine that comes with pre-configured local operating system, which is Photon OS, and application running in it. These things we have said several times. So the vCenter server is deployed over a Photon Linux machine, and this we have learned that vCenter is a ready-made available virtual machine which comes with OS installed and vCenter application where operating system is Photon Linux. So Photon Linux operating system is shown over here. This local operating system is nothing but Photon Linux operating system. But vSphere.local is a system domain and multiple user can be created in this domain, and the access can be given to different objects of vCenter with their respective roles. And I believe that now you should not be in a state of confusion that what is object, what are the roles. It is very much clear with the diagram that objects are nothing and it doesn't have any technical significance but a terminology where I can say that a cluster is an object, a virtual machine is an object, host is an object. Roles are nothing but a type of access defined over the object. So one thing is very much clear that during the time of vCenter, one default user is created with the name administrator at vSphere.local and it has a full access. And similar to this administrator user, you can create multiple users with the name admin1, admin2, L1, and so on. And even you can create a group with the name admin group, L1 group, and so on. This concept of users and group we are going to configure very soon in the hands-on lab. Now let's start with the practical. Okay, under single sign-on over here, you are in the configuration tab, right? So what you have to do is just select user and group. See, earlier we were on this tab in configuration tab under single sign-on. Over here now you click user and group over here. So under user tab, see this is a user tab. Under user tab you will see domain as local OS. Okay, and if you click over here, but before that, let me show you one more thing. So the domain is local OS, and under local OS, you will even find the root user, right? There is one root user also. But in our lab, we are not concerned with the local OS. Okay, what we are doing is we are performing practicals on VMware vSphere security. So just forget about this local operating system, which is Photon Linux. We have to do nothing with this. Just click over here on domain, okay, and select vSphere.local. This is the which domain? System domain, right? vSphere domain, which is vSphere.local. Just select this over here, vSphere.local, and click on add button. You can see add button. And one more thing, in vSphere.local domain, you can see administrator account is created, and there of course there are some different accounts. So just over here we are going to create the users. So click add over here under vSphere.local. Let me repeat again. See, under single sign-on, click on users and group, come to user. From here, select vSphere.local and then click on add button over here. We are going to create a new user. Okay. So what we are going to do, guys, over here, we are going to create a user with the name admin1. Okay. User name will be admin1 at vSphere.local. Okay. Then password, we are going to use the same password over here. Just remove this. The username will be admin1. Then password, either you can use the same password which VMware has. Just see, do this one thing. Just click over here, it will give you VMware one exclamation. So we will be using the same password over here so that you don't get confused. All of them will be in the sync. The same password which VMware has set for the default, VMware one capital. Over here also you will be saying the same password. Do this. Okay, you have confirmed the password. The first name, if you need, it's okay, or else just simply say add button over here. What we did, we have created a user with the name admin1. Similarly, we will be creating another user with the name admin2. Then the password, okay, the same password, VM capital, VMware, one exclamation. Click on add button. Additionally, let's create one more user in this domain vSphere.local. Click on add button. We will say user as L1. Okay, and the password, we will be keeping that same password, or if you want different password, you can just type your own password, not an issue. Click on add button. Moving on, what we are going to do is we will be creating one group with the name admin group. Okay, click on add button over here as well. Give the name of the group as admin group. It is asking you add members from vSphere.local. Select vSphere.local because we have created the users in this domain vSphere.local. Now you have to add the members. So you will be selecting the members admin1 and admin. Click on add button. What we did, we created three users with the name admin1, admin2 and L1. Then we created one group with the name admin group, and we have added admin1 and admin2 users in the admin group. And before we proceed further, what we are going to do is I want to show you something. This domain was vSphere.local where we created all the users and group. Just select local OS, which is the operating system domain. You cannot even add this. See, there is add button but disable. You know why? Because if you want to create a user in the local OS domain, you have to log in into the Photon Linux machine. This is the system domain, that is vSphere domain, and you are logging into the vSphere. That is the reason you will be able to add the user in vSphere local domain, which is a system domain. I believe that all of them know about the Active Directory. I have shown you the deployment of Active Directory just before the vCenter deployment in my lab, in my hands-on lab, sorry, in my home lab. If you didn't remember that, just recall it by going to the particular session. Okay, I have shown you that Active Directory, how you will deploy Active Directory, which is one of the prerequisite. The DNS server is one of the prerequisite to deploy the vCenter server. This I have clearly shown you. That was a separate tutorial for that. Basically, in the Active Directory of any organization, it has all their users created in it, and even groups are created in the Active Directory. In production environment, each and every IT user access their computers using this Active Directory created user, that is called as domain user. So I can use Active Directory for the authentication purpose. In short, I can say all the computers in your network are the member of your Active Directory. Now assume that I have my Active Directory and I have many users, and you all know administrator is a default account created with the full privileges. But question over here is, if organization has all the user created over here in Active Directory, again creating the same user in the vSphere.local domain in vCenter is a good idea or a bad idea? Of course, it is a bad idea of creating the same users again and again. VMware says that if you want to use your Microsoft Active Directory with single sign-on for authentication purpose, you can integrate your Active Directory with your vCenter server. So now, just over here in the hands-on lab, under single sign-on, click on configuration. Under identity provider, over here, there is an option Active Directory domain. If you have Active Directory in your lab, you can straight away join the Active Directory from here and use AD user for integration. Straight away from here, you can join the Active Directory. You can click over here and you can join the Active Directory if you have Active Directory in place. Guys, earlier what used to happen up to the hands-on lab for VMware vSphere 7, we were having Active Directory in the lab itself. In this hands-on lab, we were having the Active Directory. So we were able to integrate the Active Directory and then we used to authenticate to the vSphere, vCenter server through a Active Directory user. But from vSphere 8, I can see that it is discontinued. But remember, AD integration is a small part and one-time job, but learning to assign permissions and role is a daily job of an VMware administrator and a very important topic as well. If in future AD is added in the VMware hands-on lab for vSphere 8, I will add this topic. Now instead of AD user, we will be doing a lab on local user. Now if the user is the Active Directory user or a local user, user is a user and the configuration is going to be remain same whether you do a lab on the AD user or a lab for the permissions, for the defining the roles and defining the object. If you do this lab on the local user, the topic is going to remain same. The user is user. So basic funda is to learn how to define the object for a specific user and how to assign the role irrespective it is a AD user or it is a local user for the vSphere.local domain. Concept will remain same whether user are on the vCenter domain, that is vSphere.local, or they are on the Active Directory domain. Okay, so you have to give permission to user on objects. The only benefit of integrating Active Directory is you have users already in Active Directory, so no need to create the same user over here again. We have created the users, right? Just sometime before you have created the user. So if you have Active Directory in your domain, in your organization running, instead of creating this users manually over here, you would have integrated the Active Directory from here, and the same users you would have fetched over here and used for the authentication purpose. Now come to your first step in VMware hands-on lab. We will start creating the permissions on the object. We will learn how to give the permission on the object. Okay, click on cluster over here. Over here where you are into the cluster. Okay, then click on permissions. Over here click on add button. What we are learning, we are learning how to assign the permission role to any object. So what we did, we have selected the object cluster, we went to assign the permissions, we have click on permissions, click on add button. Okay, and over here we are doing a lab in vSphere.local domain. Okay, we don't have any Active Directory, we are doing in the local domain. Over here select the user as admin1. It is asking for a role. It will be administrator. Admin will be administrator role, right? And guys, always make an habit to check propagate children box over here. It means that if you give permission to cluster, if you give a permission to cluster, the default permission, by default the permission will be given to the host as well. That is, if the permission is given to one object, will be permitted for all the below objects, okay, for that particular user. When you select this box propagate to children, you have given a permission to the cluster, but this will be propagated to all the below objects. Below objects are children. So if you have given a permission, the admin one user and the administrator for the cluster, the same permission will be assigned to host esxi1a, esxi2a as well. Click on OK button. Now it is seen that admin1 user is given administrator role permission for this cluster. Now come to the PPT. But before going to PPT, let me show you one more thing. Guys, we have given the permission admin1 user full administrator role we have given. We haven't touched till now the ESXi1 host or ESXi2 host, but we have selected the box propagate to children. Just select esxi1 and come to permission, you can see that admin1 user has full administrator access to this object also, which is esxi1. Why? Because whatever permission you give to any object, it is propagated to all the childrens below. Even esxi2, you will see that it has the admin1 user has administrator access to which object? To esxi2 object as well. Even if you go to Tiny Linux or any other machine, if you go to permission, you can see that admin1 user is given the administrator role for the Tiny Linux also. You have not given this permission. What you did, you have simply said propagate to children. So all the below object will get the same permission for this specific user. Now come to PPT. The first point is practically justified that permissions are inherited in a hierarchical manner. We have seen that the permission was given only to the cluster object, but it has propagated to all the childrens. Now again come to our hands-on lab. Over here, you are on the cluster, okay? Go to permissions and then click on add button over here, and this time you are not going to add a user, but we will be adding a admin group. So the domain will be vSphere.local, okay, because we are doing the hands-on lab on this domain, local domain. Now this time we are going to add a group, not the user, which is admin group. The role will be administrator. Just check this box, propagate children, okay. So till now, you have given permission and assigned role to admin1 user and admin group also. Click OK. What we did, we have assigned the permissions and given the roles for admin1 user and for admin group as well. This is the time now to justify the configuration, what all we have done. What we have done till now, we created the users and group, then we have assigned the object and the permissions to admin1 user and admin group, okay. To practically justify whatever we have done, just open the new incognito window, new private window, okay. Open new private window over here, and then over here open your vCenter server, okay. Open your vCenter server over here, and instead of your administrator account, this time you will be accessing using admin1 at the rate vsphere.local. The password will be same, VMware VM capital 1 exclamation and enter. So now you are logging with the admin1 user, okay. Over here you will be able to see that it says that you have no privilege to view VCSA, which is vCenter server. You don't have any privilege to view this object. Which object? VCSA, that is vCenter server appliance. You don't have a privilege, okay. So using the admin1 user, you are not able to view, or I can say you don't have a privilege to view vCenter server. Just expand this, and then over here come to your virtual data center. It says that you have no privilege to view this object as well. Even you are not having access to your virtual data center. Expand more, and now over here click on your cluster. You can see that you are having a permission to view the cluster details, right? You're not getting any kind of error about no permissions. Why? Because you have given the permission only to cluster. Let me show you. You have given permission only to clusters and said propagate to children, so it has been propagated to the lower objects, but you haven't given the permission to the virtual data center or to the vCenter server appliance. This is the reason. Then you go to your user where you have logged in with admin1, for which you have given the permission. You will see that You don't have access to your vCenter server. You don't have access to your virtual data center, but yes, you do have a permission to the cluster. Not only that, if you expand this, you will have access to your esxi host 1, esxi 2a host, and all your virtual machines are also visible over here. So it is justified that when you give administrator access to a specific object and propagate the permission, you can see that object and all the lower objects will be there. And since you have given administrator access, the full privilege is seen over here. Now, log out from here. If you remember, I have given permission to admin one user for cluster, but didn't give any permission to admin two user, right? But if you remember, I have given the permission to admin group in cluster. Additionally, if you remember that I have added admin 1 and admin 2 user in admin group. So over here in the same console, login through admin 2 user. Remember, we have not given any permission to admin 2, but yes, we have created a group and we have added that group, and admin 2 and admin 1 are the member of that group, right? So we will log in through that admin 2 user. And once you are logging through admin 2 user over here, this is admin 2 user, right? The same permissions are there. See, you cannot see vCenter, you cannot see virtual data center, but you expand and see cluster, you will see cluster. Not only that, if you will see that admin 1 and admin 2 has same level of permissions, so you can log in through admin 2 user using a group permission also. So guys, the best practice is to give permission on group basis and not on individual user basis. Groups are very useful and they are very helpful also. Now let's understand why they are helpful. Consider in your organization you created one group with name L1 engineer and you have three L1 engineers. So you added these three L1 engineers in one group with the name L1 group. Assume that these engineers are given various permissions on different objects. So now if they are leaving the company, you have to remove these permissions from every object one by one. See, L1 is the user. Okay, you have given the permission. So what will happen? L1 is given permission over here, over here, over here, here, everywhere. L1 is given permission. So if he is leaving the company, then what you have to do? You have to remove the permission of L1 user from each and every object one by one, one by one, one by one. Right? So consider that. Consider an additional case. Assume that you have, let's say for example, admin users, admin 1, admin 2, admin 3, and now you have given a permission of a cluster as a full privilege to admin 1 user, and admin 1 left the organization. Then you will not only delete the user, you have to remove that permissions of these users as well. And now if new admin with name admin 4 joins the organization, then again you have to add admin 4 user and give similar permission again. But if you have a group of admin user created, then simply what you will do, you will add the permission assigned for any object to this admin group will be assigned to the new user. Let me repeat again. I took two different examples, right? See now, either L1 group is created, level 1 engineer group is created, or admin group is created. Now the permissions, assume that permissions are given on the user basis. So the permission will be given on this object, this object, this object, this object, this object. So what you have to do, if that particular L1 engineer or admin 1 user is resigning from the job, you have to go to each and every object one by one and remove the permission, right? But if you have given the access through a group, let's say for example admin group is given the access for this cluster, assume that one of the admin is leaving the company, then what simply you have to do, going to group, you have to simply remove the user. Once you remove the user, the permission for that user will be removed from every object. So this sounds good and it makes the life easy, that if you give a permission on the group basis, adding the permission or removing the permissions become easy. So simply once in a life create admin group or create admin group and give the permissions to admin group, and similar way deal with the other group as well. So it sounds easy, right? That instead of creating, instead of giving the permissions on the user basis, give a permission on the group basis. Now, come to the tab where you have opened the administrator account vSphere access, right? vCenter server access. This one, tab where you have opened the vCenter using administrator account. Over here and under host and clusters, under host and clusters. This is host and clusters, right? Click on Windows 10 machine. This is Windows 10 machine, right? And then to permission over here. Click on add button and over here select the group as admin group. Okay. And apart from that, the role say no access. No access role. Okay. And click on propagate to children. Guys, make the habit to say that propagate to children. Okay. So what we did, we have given a permission to Windows 10 machine with no access for admin group. Okay, and actually over here when you say propagate to children, it doesn't make any sense. Why? Because Windows 10 is the last machine, right? And nothing is there to propagate, but make it a habit. Now if you see that, click on OK button. Okay, what we did on Windows 10 machine for user, for the admin group, we have given the permission no access role, no access role. Okay, now come to the private window again. Over here, the private window, you are logged in as admin to user, right? Log out from here, or else do one thing, don't even log out, just refresh from here. Okay, once you refresh, you will see that Windows 10 machine was there earlier, but now it has disappeared. Windows 10 machine is not available. Let's understand what exactly has happened. See on the cluster, let me take you again over here, the menu. See on this cluster, okay, on this cluster you have given full privilege and propagated to children, all these children. Okay, but at the same time, the last machine Windows 10, you said no access, no access role for admin group. Basically, you did so to hide this Windows 10 machine from administrator. So in this way, guys, in production also, if you don't want to give access of a specific machine or hide any machine, it can be achieved using no access permission. When you say no access, that particular machine will be hide. So it is clear. In production, if you want to give access of multiple things, but at the same time if you want to hide a specific virtual machine or a host, then you can simply just go over there, select the user or group, and they define the role as no access. Moving on. Now if you go to tiny linux, this machine, tiny linux machine, okay, you will see that admin group has full access. Why? Because you have given full access to this cluster and propagated to children's, right? So now in a similar way, if you give a read only to a cluster, if you give read only access to the cluster and give admin group full privilege of Windows 10, okay, admin user will have only read access from the cluster to Tiny Linux 2, but Windows 10 will have full access. Hope you understood, or else let's me repeat once again. What we did now in the practical is on the cluster for admin group we have given full privilege, but on Windows 10 we said no access. Why we did? Because we want to hide this Windows 10 virtual machine from all the admin group users. Now if in case you give the access as a read-only access for the cluster and say propagate to children up to, and then not only this, at the same time you say that Windows 10 should have full privilege, full administrative access, what will happen? From cluster up to Tiny Linux 2 will have read-only access and Windows 10 will have administrative access. If you want to do this lab, this also you can do and check it on your own. Now, I think the things are crystal clear to you how the permissions and role works in the VMware vSphere, and this is achieved using vSphere security. Now click on Tiny Linux 2 virtual machine. Okay, come to permissions over here and add the user and select the user as L1. Okay, select the user as L1 and see this user is a level 1 user. So of course, you will not give the administrator rights. You will say that a read only rights you are going to give over here and say propagate to children. Over here, L1 user has been given a read only permission for the object in the Linux 2. Click OK. Now in the private window, go to private window. Okay, just log out from here and log in using the L1 user. Okay, log in using L1 user. L1 at the rate vSphere dot local. Password is VMware one explanation where VM is capital. Hit enter. Now in private window, when you log in using L1 user over here, you can see that on vCenter there is no access. Expand this and you will see that even on the virtual data center there is no access. Expand this and you will see that even on cluster there is no access. Expand it more and you will see that you cannot see that host and all. Only tiny Linux 2 machine is visible over here. Over here, the question will come to many mind that host is not visible, but why cluster and data center is visible? See, you have given the read-only permission for Tiny Linux 2. You will see that nothing is visible. ESXi host 1 is not visible. ESXi 2 is not visible. Other virtual machines are not visible. On but vCenter server is visible, data center is visible, cluster is visible. So the question will come that why it is visible, and if it is visible, then why the host and the virtual machines are not visible. So let me explain you this. One important thing is, and one more thing, if you click on Tiny Linux over here, na, you will not be able to see the preview also. The preview of the machine is also not visible, right? So remember that this vCenter, data center, cluster are all virtual objects. But your host, that is a physical server, and you have not given permission to your physical host. One important thing is that you cannot see the console also, right, of the virtual machine for the Tiny Linux 2. If you see the console, you can open and edit. I miss out one thing. Yes, why it is not visible? Because these are the virtual components. vCenter server is a virtual component. Data center is a virtual data center. Cluster is a virtual concept. But the hosts are a physical host. So over here, the virtual part will be visible, but the physical part will not be visible. Now, one more thing we have seen that on Tiny Linux 2, since you have given read-only permission, even the preview is not visible to you. So you cannot even open this, right? This console you cannot open it, you cannot edit it because you have given read only permission. Now you right click on the Tiny Linux machine over here, okay, and just go to power button over here. Click on power. You will see that you are not able to do anything. You can't even power on, power off, restart. Nothing is there. Why? Because this is a L1 user and you have given the read only permission. So the user cannot power on the machine, cannot restart the machine. Okay, so nothing can be performed over here. Now assume that in your virtual data center, you have a machine for which you have given a permission as read only permission to your L1 user. Assume that this L1 user is working for the NOC team at night shift and he gets a call from one of the customer saying that, my dear engineer, I am having one virtual machine inside your data center, one virtual machine inside your virtual data center. Okay. And there is some problem with the machine. Due to some issue, this machine requires a restart. Now, since the L1 engineer is given the read only access, he cannot even restart, reboot, shut down, nothing. Engineer will say that sorry, as it's a late night and you have to call morning when the senior engineers will be available. They will have the full access and they can restart. I can't restart because I only have a read only access. Customer will get angry and the next day possibly your manager will be kicked out. Customer will say that what is the use of this network operation center if I can't get such a silly support? And hopefully the customer will be writing the big email with the escalation. This is a real time scenario I'm explaining you guys. Now to avoid this situation, you must give full permission so L1 can also restart. But the problem is giving the full permission to the L1 user, he may do some unauthorized changes which may have a bad impact. So the solution is better to give the customized permission role. So we will learn now over here how to give the customized permission role. Okay. So let's do one thing. We will be coming to the lab now. Okay. Come to the browser where you have taken access of the vCenter server using the administrator account. Okay. Come to the second tab. Over here under administration. Okay. You are in administration, right? So just come down a little and you will find an option. Scroll up, you will find an option access control, and in that you will find an option as roles. Guys, from here also you can check that which roles who is using. Okay, so guys, to check that which role which user is being assigned, just go over here on administrator, for example, click on usage, and you will see that administrator role is being assigned to administrator user. And not only that, even admin1 is the user, and where it is defined on which object, on the cluster object. Admin group is also assigned the administrator roles for which object, for the cluster object. Similarly, if you come to read only, over here you will see that L1 is the user assigned the role as read only role, which object, and Linux 2 object. So these things can be verified from here as well. Now coming to our topic, what we are seeing is we are learning how to create a customized role. Click on new button over here. Okay, and then we are going to create one customized role. But before that, just come to the PPT. We have discussed earlier also. It says that when you create a role, in that role you can give privileges, that is permissions, as per your requirement. You can give the privileges, the permissions as per your requirement to this particular user. For on this object, you can define a role, or you can say the privileges as per your requirement. So over there in the practical, coming to the practical, we are going to define the customized role as per the requirement. Okay, give the name of the role as power on, power off. Okay, this role you are going to give to virtual machine. Okay, which virtual machine? That will be tiny Linux machine, right? From here you will be selecting the virtual machine, because this role we are assigning to virtual machine, right? Tiny Linux to virtual machine. So simply over here select virtual machine option. You have to scroll down a little bit from here also. Okay, you will find this option, select virtual machine. Okay, once you have selected the virtual machine, on the right side over here, come over here and then go to interaction. Just scroll down. Okay, you have to click on see more privileges over here. Okay, my mouse is not working properly, guys. Not an issue. Okay, just select interaction over here. Okay, this is the option, right? Interaction. Just come on this particular option, just click on show see more privileges, and below interaction just click on see more privileges. Okay, and then over here you will find the power option. Be careful, because the thing is that it is bit the complex window, so you might face some issue. Okay, under interaction, when you have shown show more privileges, then you have to select this option, power off and power on. Okay, there is option reset. Select this as well, and let's see some more. Okay, suspend. This four option. What we selected: power on, power off, reset, suspend. Click on create button. Now, once you are done with this, you will just scroll down a little over here. You will see, just click this and drag it little. You will see that one role is created with the name power on, power off. This is the same role which we have created just now, right? And what we did, select this. We have given this role. Where we have given this role to virtual machine, right? Now this role we are going to assign to L1 user on Tiny Linux 2 object. Come to first tab over here in Tiny Linux 2. What we will do, we have this user L1 with the role read only. Just select this user, and after selecting this user, click on edit. From read only, we will do power on, power off role we will assign. Okay, where is the role? It's over here. Okay, and click on OK button. Now you can see that the role power on, power off is assigned to L1 user on Tiny Linux 2 machine. Once this is done, what we are going to do is we will go to our private window where we have access the vCenter server appliance using L1 user. Just refresh it from here, and after that right click over here on Tiny Linux to go to power, and you will see that all these options are available: power off, suspend, reset. And there might be some who might be thinking that we have enabled power on also, then why the power on option is not enabled for us? So guys, don't get confused that the machine is already power on, so how power on option will be enabled? This is not possible, right? So I believe that this concept is very much clear for you, how to assign the customized role. Now we will discuss a small topic of AD integration, although it is not possible to integrate the Active Directory because your Active Directory is not available in the lab, but I will show you how to do that. Come to your second tab over here, then just scroll down, come to single sign-on, come to configuration. So guys, over here what you are going to do is, the very first thing is, when you go to configuration, identity provider, click on identity provider. In the production environment, you will say join Active Directory, and this will come. You have to give the domain of your Active Directory. Okay, this is optional. You have to provide the administrator account or a service account for joining the Active Directory. This will be the account of the Active Directory. Okay, once you are done with this, it can be either administrator account or a service account which you are basically using. The configuration requires a reboot. It will ask to reboot the vCenter server. Okay, so it will take around 20 minutes for your vCenter server to reboot, and once the server is rebooted, this will join the Active Directory. Your vCenter server will join the Active Directory. Once that is done, then what you have to do, the next step is come into entity sources over here. You have to simply click the add button over here and provide the following details and simply add it. Okay, so basically this is how you will be integrating your Active Directory over here, and then the users and all will be available over here. The Active Directory users will be available here. Over here you can just switch from here the domain to your Active Directory domain, and you will be able to see the users. So guys, if in future the VMware adds the AD over here in the vSphere 8 lab, then definitely I will be adding one more tutorial how to integrate the Active Directory, and even over there I will show you how to leave the Active Directory or change the Active Directory. This complete topic will be there for this. And when now last but the one important thing before we conclude is coming to your incognito window over here, or I can say the private window. Coming to the private window, you are logged in through the L1 user. Okay, now let's log out from here. Remember, we have created an admin one user, right? An admin one user is an administrator account which has full privileges. Okay, just come over here and log into your admin one at the rate vSphere dot local and the password. I did one mistake. Okay. Okay. See now, this is the admin one user. Okay. And you can see that you are able to see the cluster and all, but you are not able to see the virtual data center or the vCenter server appliance. Why? Because you have given the permission on the cluster. So now what we will do, just come to your main browser where you have access the vCenter through administrator account, right? Come to the first tab, and over here, this time we are going to give the access to the admin one user the to the vCenter server object. Okay, so over here, just click on add button. Either you can add admin one user or you can add admin group. It's up to you. So I will say, for example, admin one for now, or you can say admin group. The best practice is admin group. So let's say we will add admin group. Okay, administrator role is administrator. Propagate to children and click on OK button. What we did, we have given the vCenter server access to the admin one user. Go to the private window over here and just refresh. Okay, once you refresh, you will see that now admin one user has access to the vCenter, has access to virtual data center, it even has access to the host and virtual machines. But one important thing now over here, you have to note that if you click on vSphere client, just let me add one note over here. The important note over here, I will say that see, when you add a permission or remove a permission, you don't have to log out, log in, or something like what you do in Windows. Simply, you have to refresh the page, and you will see that the permissions are applied properly over there. So this is a very, I can say, a quick thing which is happening over here, and simply a refresh is okay to change the permission and access. Now, guys, admin one user has full permission on vCenter, but it is not having permission everywhere. When I say that it is not having permission everywhere, let me show you. Click on vSphere client, come to content libraries. See, if you remember, with administrator account, the content library used to be shown, the one default content library, but it is not shown over here. Let me show you practically. Just come over here. If you go to the vSphere client over here and go to content libraries, see the default HOL library is over here. But although this admin one user has full privilege, it has access to the vCenter server also, but still you cannot see the content library over here, right? Let's understand why this is happening over here. And one more thing, both the user, administrator as well as admin, both are having the same type of privileges. Although both of them are having the same privileges, but still the shocking part is that administrator user is able to see the content library, but admin one user is not able to see the content library. See, when I went to host and cluster for the administrator account over here, I am able to see the content library over here, but this is not the case with the admin user, although both of them are having the same permission, right? Remember, the permissions are flowing vertically down, which means that the permissions will flow from top to bottom. Like when you say that propagate to children, the permissions will fall from top to bottom vertically, not horizontally. Okay, it will not move. The horizontal permissions will not be there. Similarly, there are other modules in the VMware vSphere which are integrated. And remember that this content library, now this content library is an integrated module. This was not there earlier. The content library concept is introduced later in the VMware vSphere. Similarly, there are some other integrated modules like NSX and all. So, guys, these all are the integrated module. Similarly, there are other products like Site Recovery Manager and many others. They can be integrated with vCenter. Earlier, they were not there. So whenever you assign the permission, it will flow vertically down, but not horizontally. Now, if you want to give the permission to content library or to any other integrated module, you need to do something extra configuration. Okay. So now do one thing. Come to the second tab in your browser where you have access through the administrator account. Okay. And then coming over here, you will be clicking on the administrator. You will be find a option global configuration. See, this is administration, right? Just scroll up. There is the option global permissions. Okay, click on global permissions, Over here you will be giving the permission to any user. If you want to give access to content library to any user, you will be giving that permission over here, a global permission. Click on add button over here. Okay, and then over here select the admin group. Click on admin group, and once you have selected this, the role over here is administrator, right? The administrator will give you the full role. So I there is an option called content library, right? So we have to find that option over here, content library administrator. Just let me, this one, content library registry, registry administrator. And there are many other roles as well. Okay, so either you can say that this role you want to assign, or you can keep simple administrator role over here. And over here if you don't select this, then also it is okay, because there is no library inside the library. If there is any library inside the library, and if you want to propagate that, then you will select this option. But over here there is one library only. If you don't select also, that is also okay, and simply click on OK button over here. Now what we have done is we have given admin group the global permission for content library. Now when you go to the private window over here and simply refresh over here, you will see that the content library access is also available over here. So guys, what we did, we started with creating the users and the group. Then we have seen how to assign the permission. Before we conclude, let me take you to the PPT and justify small. We have seen that permissions are inherited in a hierarchical manner. Then we have seen that permission defined for a child object always overrides the permission that are propagated from the parent object. The best example was that for Windows 10 machine, we have said no access role. And then we have seen that although the parent object were assigned the permission that was floating till down, but the child object permission has overridden the permission of the parent object. And remember the principle of least privileges: always give the privileges as much as it is required. Don't open the full privilege option. So that was all about, guys, vSphere security. So in this session we have learned how to give permission on different level of vCenter and how you can create a wonderful secure environment. That's all, guys, in this session. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please subscribe it now and do share with your friends. Thanks for watching and see you in the next session.